Don't come alone and look abandoned. That was the text my mother sent me the morning of my sister's engagement dinner, the dinner where she was celebrating her engagement to my ex-fiancé. I was 28. Broke. Exhausted. And making coffee for strangers in downtown Chicago, while my own family asked me to smile for the woman who stole my wedding. So I did the only thing a desperate woman with nothing left to lose could think of. I walked up to the most dangerous-looking man in my cafe and asked him to pretend to be my husband for one night. I paid a stranger $300 to hold my hand and lie to my family. I found him sitting alone in the back booth of my coffee shop, dressed like midnight, watching the front door as if it owed him money. I thought he was just another rich man with cold eyes and no patience. I did not know every dangerous man in Chicago lowered his voice when they said his name. My name is Lena Marlowe. I was 28 years old. And I made lattes for people who complained about oat milk like it was a human rights issue. I worked the morning shift at a little cafe in River North. Then cleaned offices 3 nights a week because rent did not care how tired I was. By then, I had learned that desperation does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like smiling at customers while your phone keeps buzzing with messages from the people who broke you. That Friday morning, my mother texted me 17 times before 7. The first few messages were sweet in the way poison can be sweet when it is poured carefully. She said she missed me. She said my sister's engagement dinner would not feel complete without me. Then came the real reason. She needed me there with a man. Because my ex-fiancé would be attending with my younger sister. And my family did not want me making things awkward. I stared at that message behind the espresso machine until the milk steamed over and burned my fingers. My coworker Tessa asked if I was okay. And I said yes, because that was the only answer I had practiced enough. My sister Brooke had taken Ryan from me 6 months earlier. Though everyone in my family called it a complicated situation. They said love was messy. They said adults should forgive. They said I was being bitter because I refused to bless the knife they had pulled from my back. Ryan had proposed to me beside Lake Michigan with a ring he could barely afford. And I had said yes because I believed struggle meant love if both people were honest. Brooke helped me choose the wedding flowers. My mother cried over dress photos. My father promised to walk me down the aisle. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, I came home early from a double shift and found Ryan's truck outside Brooke's apartment building at midnight. I did not scream when I saw them through the lobby glass. That is what people never understand about shock. It does not always make you loud. Sometimes it makes you so quiet, you can hear your own life splitting cleanly down the middle. Brooke had her arms around his neck. Ryan had one hand on the back of her head. They looked comfortable. Not guilty. Comfortable. Like betrayal was not something they had done that night. But somewhere they had been living for a while. My family held a meeting 2 days later in my parents' dining room. The same room where my mother had once displayed my baby pictures during graduation. I remember the smell of lemon polish and roast chicken. I remember Brooke crying without tears. Ryan kept saying, "It just happened." My father rubbed his forehead like I had inconvenienced him with my heartbreak. Then my mother reached across the table, touched my wrist, and said, "Lena, don't punish your sister for being chosen." That sentence became a hook under my skin. Not because it was cruel, though it was. Because nobody at that table acted surprised by it. Brooke lowered her eyes, like a tragic bride in a movie. Ryan looked relieved. My father said family had to come before pride. I realized, sitting there with my engagement ring burning on my finger, that I had not been invited to talk. I had been invited to surrender. I gave Ryan his ring back by sliding it across the table. I did not throw it. I did not beg. I did not ask Brooke why my little sister thought my life was something she could try on if it matched her dress. I just stood up, took my purse, and walked out while my mother called after me that I was being dramatic. By morning, the story had changed. Brooke and Ryan were unexpectedly in love, and I was struggling to accept reality. For 6 months, I stayed away. I blocked Ryan. I muted Brooke. I answered my mother only when guilt wore me down. I worked, paid bills, slept badly, and learned how to breathe without waiting for an apology that would never come. But the engagement dinner changed something. They were not just asking me to attend. They were asking me to appear healed so Brooke could enjoy what she had stolen without anyone feeling uncomfortable. The final text came at 8:12 that morning. My mother wrote, "Bring someone if you must. But please don't come alone and look abandoned." I read it 3 times. Then I locked my phone, set it face down beside the register, and made a cappuccino for a woman in pearls who told me the foam looked sad. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. Instead, I wiped the counter until my reflection blurred in the stainless steel. That was when the man in the back booth lifted his hand for another coffee. He had come in at opening and ordered black coffee without looking at the menu. He had not touched his phone once. 2 men sat in a parked SUV across the street, visible through the front windows. And every now and then, his eyes shifted toward them with calm awareness. His suit was too expensive for our cafe and too severe for daylight. He looked like a warning in human form. I carried his refill over because Tessa whispered that he scared her. Up close. He was maybe 36 or 37, with dark hair brushed back, a faint scar cutting through one eyebrow, and hands that did not fidget. His eyes moved to my burned fingers before he looked at my face. "You should put ice on that," he said. His voice was low, controlled, and not unkind. That somehow made him more intimidating. "I've had worse," I said automatically. He studied me for half a second too long. Like he knew that answer did not belong to the burn. Then my phone buzzed again in my apron pocket. I ignored it. But my face must have betrayed me because his gaze dropped to the pocket, then returned to me. "Someone bothering you?" he asked. I almost laughed. There was no normal reason for a stranger to ask that. There was also no normal reason for me to answer. "My family," I said. "They want me to attend my sister's engagement dinner tonight with a date. So nobody has to feel guilty that she's marrying my ex-fiancé." The words came out flat. I regretted them immediately. Customers did not need my life story. Especially men who looked like they had never lost control of anything. But he did not smirk. He did not offer fake sympathy. He only leaned back and said, "That is an ugly kind of neatness." I blinked because that was exactly what it was. Not love. Not forgiveness. Neatness. My family wanted the table arranged so nobody had to look at the damage. Brooke, beside Ryan. My parents smiling. Me placed somewhere harmless. Preferably with a man beside me to prove I was not ruined. A clean photograph. A clean lie. I looked down at the coffee pot in my hand and felt something inside me. Something tired and small. Begin to harden. "I'm sorry," I said, stepping back. That was inappropriate. He glanced at the empty chair across from him. "So is asking someone you wounded to make the wound convenient." I should have walked away then. I should have refilled sugar containers, wiped tables, and gone on being reasonable. Instead, I heard my mother's sentence again. "Don't come alone and look abandoned." My mouth moved before fear could catch it. "How much would it cost?" I asked quietly. "For you to pretend to be my husband for one night." His expression did not change. But something in the air around us did. Even the cafe noise seemed to pull back. I rushed on because silence made me braver and more foolish. "Not anything weird. Just dinner. 2 hours. You sit next to me. Call me your wife once or twice. And make my family stop looking at me like I'm a charity case." He looked at me for a long moment. "You are asking a stranger to lie for you." I swallowed. "I'm asking a stranger to stand beside me while my family lies about me." That was the first honest thing I had said all morning. His eyes sharpened slightly. Not with amusement, but interest. "What is your name?" he asked. "Lena." I did not give my last name. He noticed. Of course he noticed. "Lena," he repeated, as if testing whether it belonged to the woman standing in front of him with a coffee pot and shaking hands. "And what will you tell them my name is?" I had not thought that far. Desperate people rarely do. "Daniel," I said. grabbing the first name that sounded safe. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Daniel, he said. Fine. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. You'll do it, I asked. He pulled a black billfold from inside his jacket and placed $300 bills on the table before I could offer anything. Keep your money, he said. Use it for a dress that makes them regret the invitation. My throat tightened so fast I had to look away. Kindness from strangers always hurt more than cruelty from family. Because it proved cruelty had been a choice. I can't accept that, I said. He rose from the booth. And suddenly he seemed taller than the room. Then accept my time. He took a business card from his pocket. But it had no company name. Only a number embossed in black. Text me the address and time. I will meet you there. I turned the card over. Searching for a name. There was none. What should I call you? I asked. For the first time. He gave me something close to a smile. Though it did not soften him. Call me Daniel tonight, he said. Then he walked out of the cafe. And the two men in the SUV stepped from the curb before he reached it. One opened the back door for him. The other looked straight through the cafe window at me. Then lowered his eyes like he had just seen something he was not supposed to question. Tessa appeared beside me with her mouth open. Lena, she whispered. Do you know who that was? I still had the blank black card in my hand. My pulse had begun to beat in my neck. A customer, I said. Though even I could hear how stupid it sounded. Tessa shook her head slowly. Pale under the warm cafe lights. That was Dominic Vale. The name meant nothing to me for one innocent second. Then she said the rest. People call him the Wolf of Chicago. I almost backed out 6 times before the dinner. The first time was in the thrift store dressing room, staring at a navy dress that made me look calmer than I felt. The second was outside my apartment, when I realized I had no idea what kind of man answered to a name like the Wolf of Chicago. The 6th was when a black sedan pulled up to the curb at exactly 6:30. And Dominic Vale stepped out wearing a charcoal suit that looked like it had been made by someone who understood fear as tailoring. He did not look at me the way Ryan used to look at me before a family event, checking whether my dress was too plain or my lipstick too much. Dominic looked once, directly, and said, "Good choice." That was all. 2 words. No hunger. No mockery. No performance. Somehow, it steadied me more than a compliment would have. I clutched my small purse with both hands and reminded myself that I had asked for this. One dinner. One lie. Then I could go home and scrub the night off my skin. The restaurant was an old steakhouse near Gold Coast. The kind with velvet booths, brass lamps, and waiters who acted like every family secret had already been overheard and priced into the wine list. My parents chose it because Brooke loved being seen in expensive rooms. She had always believed beauty meant belonging wherever chandeliers hung low enough to reflect her face. I paused outside the entrance, and Dominic stopped beside me without touching me. "Do you want to leave?" he asked. The question almost broke me because nobody in my family had asked me what I wanted in months. They had asked what I could tolerate, what I could forgive, what I could make easier for everyone else. Wanting had become a private language I barely spoke. I looked through the glass and saw Brooke laughing beside Ryan at the far table. Her left hand lifted just enough to flash the ring that used to sit on mine. "No," I said. "I want to walk in." Dominic offered his arm. I took it because I needed the lie to look real. But the moment my fingers touched his sleeve, I realized he was not pretending to be strong. He simply was. The hostess glanced up, recognized him, and lost the polished smile from her face for half a second. She recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. Dominic gave her no signal, no threat, no name. He only said, "Marlowe party." And the entire front of the restaurant seemed to understand we would not be waiting. My mother saw us first. Her smile froze so perfectly I almost admired the discipline. My father's eyebrows pulled together. Brooke stopped laughing. Ryan turned. and for one, clean, beautiful, second, I watched him recognize that I had not arrived alone, and that the man beside me did not look like someone borrowed from a dating app. Dominic's hand rested lightly at the small of my back. Not possessive. Just present. Lena, my mother said, standing too quickly. You came. You invited me. I said. My voice sounded even. I had practiced in the mirror until my reflection looked tired of me. My mother's eyes slid to Dominic. She was already measuring him, pricing him, deciding whether he made my presence useful or dangerous. And you brought, she began. Dominic extended his hand before I could answer. Daniel, he said. Her husband. The word landed on the table like silverware dropped in a church. Brooke made a small sound that might have been a laugh if her face had not gone tight. Ryan stared at me with his mouth slightly open. And I hated that some wounded part of me still wanted his shock to mean regret. It did not. Men like Ryan did not regret hurting you. They regretted losing control of the version of you they could pity. My father stood and shook Dominic's hand, then immediately looked down as if surprised by the pressure returned to him. Husband, my mother repeated. Lena. That's quite an announcement. The accusation was wrapped in etiquette. But I knew its shape. How dare you have a life we did not approve? How dare you bring evidence that you survived? I sat down beside Dominic, across from Brooke and Ryan, and placed my napkin in my lap with hands that only trembled once. It was private, I said. Given how everyone handled my last engagement, privacy felt appropriate. Ryan flinched. Brooke's cheeks flushed pink, then recovered into injured softness. She had always been good at that. Turning guilt into a costume someone else had to carry. Lena, she said gently. Tonight is supposed to be happy. I looked at the ring on her finger, then at her face. I know. That's why I smiled when I came in. Dominic's eyes lowered briefly to his menu, but I saw the corner of his mouth shift. Dinner began with my mother working hard to make the room normal. She asked Dominic what he did, and he said, logistics. My father asked what kind, and Dominic replied, complicated. That ended that. Brooke tried to laugh and said secrecy was romantic. Ryan studied Dominic like a man trying to decide whether he should be jealous or afraid. I watched my family perform warmth for a stranger while withholding basic decency from me. And something in me settled into a cold, clear understanding. Then my mother lifted her wineglass and said, to Brooke and Ryan, sometimes life takes unexpected turns, but love finds its rightful place. The table murmured agreement. Ryan squeezed Brooke's hand. My father nodded. I looked at the candle between us and felt the old dining room return. The lemon polish. The roast chicken. My mother's hand on my wrist. Don't punish your sister for being chosen. I thought I had healed around that sentence. I had only grown skin over it. Dominic did not raise his glass. No one noticed at first except me. Then Brooke did. Then Ryan. My mother's smile tightened. Daniel, she said. You're not joining the toast. Dominic looked at her with the calm of a man who had made silence into a weapon long before that night. I don't toast theft, he said. The table went still so quickly I could hear the ice shift in my water glass. My father cleared his throat. That's a strong word. Dominic turned to him. So is family. He said it quietly, not dramatically. And that made it worse. My mother's face sharpened. You don't understand the history here. No, Dominic said. But I understand when a room is asking one person to bleed politely so everyone else can enjoy dinner. My breath caught. Not because he defended me. Because he named it without needing years of explanation. Ryan leaned forward then, trying to reclaim the table with the voice he used when he wanted to sound reasonable. Look, man. Lena and I had a painful ending. But nobody stole anybody. Feelings changed. He glanced at me. Softer now. As if the stranger beside me had reminded him I was a woman other men could see. We were both unhappy. I almost laughed. We That small, cowardly word. Men use it when they want to hide inside the person they betrayed. We were not unhappy, I said. My voice was quiet. But everyone heard me. You were unfaithful. Brooke's eyes flashed. For 1 second. The softness dropped. You don't have to humiliate us, she said. Tonight is my engagement dinner. I looked at her. And my cancelled wedding paid for part of it. That was the first thing I had not meant to say. And the first thing that made my father look truly uncomfortable. Because it was true. The deposit for my wedding venue had been non-refundable. And my parents had quietly transferred the credit to Brooke and Ryan's celebration. They had told me it would be wasteful not to use it. Wasteful. As if my humiliation were an expired coupon. I had not fought then. I was too tired. Too ashamed. Too trained to confuse silence with maturity. But across that restaurant table, with Dominic sitting beside me like a wall in human form, my silence finally felt more expensive than honesty. My mother set her glass down. Lena. We are not doing this in public. You invited me in public, I said. You told me not to come alone and look abandoned. Brooke's mouth opened. Ryan looked at my mother. My father stared at the table. That text, simple and cruel, had done what years of family patterns had not. It had exposed the truth in a sentence short enough nobody could pretend they misunderstood it. Dominic's hand moved under the table. Not touching mine. Just resting close enough that I knew I could reach for it if I needed to. I did not. I wanted to stand on my own legs. Even if they shook. My mother whispered. I was trying to protect you. No. I said. You were trying to protect the picture. Her eyes filled. But I knew those tears. They came whenever accountability entered the room. Ryan suddenly pushed his chair back and smiled in that brittle way people smile before they say something unforgivable. Okay. Since we're being honest. This whole husband thing is obviously fake. His gaze flicked to Dominic. No offense. But Lena couldn't keep a man like you if she had instructions. The table inhaled. Brooke said his name under her breath. But not because she disagreed. Because he had said the ugly part too soon. For a moment, the old humiliation opened its mouth under my ribs. There it was. The real belief. I was useful when I worked. Generous when I gave. Safe when I stayed small. But never chosen if someone brighter stood nearby. Dominic slowly turned his head toward Ryan. He did not raise his voice. He did not lean forward. You were engaged to her, he said. And you still speak as if standing near her was charity. Ryan's face changed. He felt the danger before he understood it. Men like him could read other men better than they could read women's pain. I'm just saying this is absurd, he muttered. She hired some guy to make a point. My mother looked at me then. Horrified less by the accusation than by the possibility that it was true. Brooke's lips parted with sudden triumph. Lena, she said softly. Is that what this is? Did you pay him? I could have lied. That was the strange thing. Dominic would have carried the lie without blinking. He had already stepped into my mess with more grace than the people who made it. But I was tired of building shelters out of falsehood. I placed my napkin on the table and looked at my sister. Yes, I said. I asked him to come because I could not face all of you alone tonight. That is how unsafe this family has become. Nobody spoke. Not even Brooke. The truth had not made me powerful in the way I expected. It made me exposed. My face burned. My throat tightened. For a second. I was that woman in the thrift store mirror again. Trying to look dignified enough to survive a room that wanted her grateful for scraps. Then Dominic stood. Every waiter within 10 feet seemed to sense it. The restaurant did not stop. But it lowered itself around him. He reached into his jacket, took out a slim black card, and placed it beside my water glass. You did not hire me, he said. You asked for one night of dignity. There is a difference. His eyes stayed on Ryan when he added. And if any person at this table confuses her honesty for weakness again, They should be very certain about who is listening. He did not threaten. Not exactly. That was the terrifying part. My father's face had gone gray. My mother's hand hovered over her wineglass but did not touch it. Ryan stared at the card. Brooke glanced from Dominic to the front of the restaurant, where the same two men from the SUV stood near the bar, as if they had grown out of the shadows. Recognition moved around the table slowly, like cold water spreading under a door. My mother whispered. Daniel. What did you say your last name was? Dominic buttoned his jacket. I didn't. Then he looked at me. And his voice shifted back into something almost gentle. Lena. Would you like to finish dinner? Or would you like to go? I looked at Brooke's ring. Ryan's clenched jaw. My mother's ruined performance. My father's silence. For years, I had waited for someone at that table to choose me. That night, I understood the more important thing. I could choose myself and leave them sitting there with the bill. I stood without apologizing. My mother said my name. But there was no authority left in it. Brooke's face had hardened into something ugly and frightened. Ryan looked like he wanted to follow. Explain. Rewrite. To regain the version of me that cried quietly and made him feel central. I did not give him that. Dominic walked beside me through the restaurant. Not touching me now. Because he seemed to understand that the leaving belonged to me. Outside, the Chicago air hit my face cold and clean. I expected Dominic to put me in the car and disappear back into whatever world produced men like him. Instead, he stood beside me under the awning, while the city moved around us in headlights and wet pavement. You told the truth when lying would have been easier, he said. I wrapped my arms around myself. It didn't feel like winning. It rarely does at first. I looked at him then. Really looked. And fear returned with the adrenaline fading. Why did you agree to come? His eyes moved to the street. Then back to me. Because I know what it looks like when a room decides one person is disposable. He said it so flatly I knew there was a graveyard behind the sentence. Even if not a literal one. Before I could ask more, my phone began buzzing in my purse. I thought it would be my mother. It was not. It was a message from an unknown number with a photo attached. My stomach tightened when I opened it. Someone had taken a picture of me leaving the restaurant with Dominic. His hand near my back. His men behind us. Under it was one sentence from Brooke. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. By midnight, the photo had already reached people I barely knew. Brooke posted it without my name at first. But she did not have to. The caption was carefully wounded. The kind of thing she wrote when she wanted sympathy but not responsibility. Imagine trying to celebrate love while someone brings a dangerous stranger just to scare your family. Under it. Friends from high school. Cousins I had not seen in years. And women from my mother's church began building a courtroom out of comments. By morning, I was no longer the woman whose sister had stolen her fiancé. I was unstable. Bitter. Reckless. I had shown up with a criminal. I had threatened the family. I had ruined Brooke's special night. That was how quickly people will accept a clean lie when the truth requires them to feel uncomfortable. I sat on the edge of my bed in my thrift store dress, reading strangers talk about my pain like it was a stain I had tracked onto Brooke's carpet. My mother called at 614. I let it ring until silence returned. Then listened to the voicemail while my coffee maker hissed on the counter. Her voice was tight. Not scared for me, but embarrassed by me. Lena. You need to fix this before it gets worse. Brooke is devastated. Ryan's family is asking questions. Your father barely slept. I don't know what you thought you were proving. But bringing a man like that into our family business was cruel. Our family business. That phrase almost made me smile. When Brooke wanted my fiancé, it was love. When my parents reused my wedding deposit for her engagement dinner, it was practicality. When I told the truth in public, it became family business. I saved the voicemail to a folder on my phone called Dinner because some part of me, the part that had finally woken up, understood that people like my mother counted on pain disappearing if they said it softly enough. I went to work because bills did not pause for humiliation. The cafe felt too bright. Too normal. Filled with cinnamon. Espresso. And people tapping cards like nothing in the world had cracked. Tessa saw my face and pulled me into the storage room before the first rush. "Brooke's post is everywhere," she said. "I know." She held up her phone. "No. Lana. It's worse," Ryan commented. I looked down. I already tired before I read it. Ryan had written. I tried to stay respectful. "But Lena has been spiraling since the breakup. We're praying she gets help before she hurts herself or someone else." There it was. The old cowardice, dressed as concern. He did not call me angry. He called me unstable. He did not call me honest. He called me dangerous. And because Dominic Vale had walked beside me for one night, Ryan had found the perfect shadow to place over my face. By 10. My manager asked to speak privately. Dana was not cruel. But she was careful in the way small business owners become when public trouble touches their front door. She said someone had called the cafe asking whether we employed women connected to organized crime. Someone else had left a 1-star review saying the cafe was unsafe. Dana rubbed her temple and said, "I'm not firing you. But maybe take 2 days off until this cools down." I heard the apology under the decision. It still hurt. I left through the alley because I could not bear walking past customers pretending not to recognize me. Outside. A black sedan waited near the curb. I stopped so fast my paper bag of clothes from the thrift store bumped against my knee. The rear window lowered. And Dominic looked out. Calm as if we had planned this. "I heard," he said. Of course he had. Men like him did not hear gossip. They heard movement. "I don't need you to fix it," I said before he could offer. His eyes stayed on mine. I was not going to offer violence. Lena. Shame warmed my face because that had been my first fear. Not that he would hurt anyone. That some desperate corner of me might want him to make them afraid. He opened the door but did not command me to get in. "I thought you might want to know who took the picture." I got into the car because the sidewalk suddenly felt too public. Dominic handed me a slim envelope. Inside was a printed still from the restaurant's lobby camera. Brooke stood near the hostess stand before dinner, speaking to a man in a tan coat. The same man later held up his phone as Dominic and I left. His face was clear. So was Brooke's smile. "He runs a small reputation firm," Dominic said. "Crisis cleanup. Social media pressure. Quiet intimidation." I stared at the photo until the edges bent under my fingers. Brooke had not reacted emotionally after the dinner. She had prepared for me before I even arrived. The realization was colder than the betrayal itself. She knew she was going to use whatever happened against me. I said. Dominic nodded once. "Likely." I thought of Brooke lowering her eyes at the table, pretending to be wounded while waiting for her hired witness to capture the right frame. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. He looked out at the winter-gray street, his reflection faint in the glass. "Because I brought attention to your life. I can't undo that. But I can give you facts." He placed another item in my hand. A small flash drive sealed in plastic. Restaurant lobby footage. Public area. No sound. "It shows enough." I closed my fingers around it and felt the shape of something steadier than rage. That afternoon, my father came to my apartment for the first time since the breakup. He did not knock like a man visiting his daughter. He knocked like a man arriving to collect an overdue payment. I opened the door but left the chain on. His eyes went to it. Offended. "Really? Lena," he said. "After last night?" "Yes." His mouth tightened. He had aged in the last 6 months. Or maybe I had only stopped seeing him as unbreakable. He held a folder under one arm. "Your mother is falling apart. Brooke can't stop crying. Ryan's parents are threatening to pull support from the wedding. You need to write a statement." I looked at the folder. What kind of statement? He slid papers through the gap as far as the chain allowed. "Something simple. Say you misrepresented things at dinner. That Daniel is not your husband. and that Brooke and Ryan's relationship began after yours ended. I read the first paragraph. Then the second. Then the signature line with my name already typed beneath it. My father had not come to ask. He had come with a script. The statement also said I had given my wedding vendor credits to Brooke as a blessing and later became resentful. That was the part that made my hands go cold. They did not only want my silence about the betrayal, they wanted ownership of my sacrifice. No, I said. My father exhaled, like I had disappointed him by breathing wrong. Lena. This isn't about pride anymore. It was never about pride. He leaned closer to the door. Do you understand what kind of man you dragged into this? Do you understand what people are saying? If you don't fix it, you will damage this family permanently. I looked at him through the narrow opening and finally saw the truth. He was not afraid the family would break. He was afraid people would see where it was already broken. I paid $6,000 toward the original wedding. I said. The venue credit was in my name. Brooke used it. His jaw moved. We were trying not to waste money. Whose money? He said nothing. That silence answered more clearly than any confession. I stepped back. I'm not signing. His eyes hardened in a way I had seen only a few times growing up. Usually, when I refused to make Brooke's mistakes easier to clean, then don't expect us to protect you, he said. The old me would have folded at that sentence. The old me believed protection was something parents gave because love had a shape and duty had a sound. But standing there with a chain between us and evidence in my kitchen drawer, I understood that his protection had always come with a price. Be useful. Be quiet. Be second. I closed the door before he could say my name again. That night, I opened every email I had avoided for months. Venue contracts. Florist deposits. Catering receipts. The message from my mother asking if I would mind letting Brooke use the reservation because it would help everyone move forward. The bank statement showing the transfer from my savings. The screenshot of my mother telling me not to come alone and look abandoned. I built a folder on my laptop called, What Happened? And for once, the title did not feel dramatic. It felt accurate. Tessa came over with takeout and sat cross-legged on my floor while I sorted the timeline. She was the one who found the old voicemail from Ryan. I had forgotten I saved it. It was from 2 days after I found him with Brooke. Before the family meeting. Before the story changed. His voice was low and panicked. Lena. Please don't tell everyone yet. Brooke is scared. I know what we did was wrong. But if this gets out before we explain it, your parents will hate her. We listened to it 3 times in silence. Not because I needed to hear the pain again, but because the sentence did what no argument could. What we did was wrong. Ryan had said it before he learned denial could be more useful. Tessa looked at me carefully. Lena. This is enough. I shook my head. Enough for what? Enough to stop letting them tell the story for you. I wanted to believe her. I also knew truth did not automatically win. It had to be placed where lies could not step over it. The invitation came the next morning by text from my mother. She called it a private family brunch at Brooke's apartment. But the attached guest list had 23 names, including Ryan's parents, 2 cousins who loved gossip like oxygen, and the pastor from my mother's church. This is our chance to repair things, she wrote. Please come prepared to apologize and clarify what really happened. I looked at the word repair until it lost meaning. Dominic called 5 minutes later. I had not given him permission to keep checking on me, but I answered anyway. They invited you somewhere, he said. It was not a question. A brunch. Do not go alone. I almost smiled. That was how this started. This is different. His voice sharpened slightly. At the restaurant, they wanted appearance. Now they want control. I looked at the folder on my laptop. The flash drive beside it. The printed statement my father had pushed through my door. I'm going, I said. But not as the woman they think they invited. There was a pause. Then Dominic said, What do you need? I thought about it. Not a threat. Not revenge delivered by dangerous men. Not his name used like a weapon. A ride, I said. And if they try to take my phone or block the door, I need someone outside who will call the police like a normal person. For the first time, he laughed softly. A normal person. I can arrange that. On Sunday morning, I dressed simply in black pants, a cream sweater, and the same navy coat I had worn to the restaurant. No performance. No borrowed glamour. I printed 3 copies of the timeline and placed them in a folder. I saved the voicemail in 2 locations. I uploaded the restaurant footage to a private link and scheduled nothing. Posted nothing. Threatened nothing. The power was not in exposing them wildly. The power was in no longer being afraid that exposure might happen. Brooke opened the apartment door wearing white, which made me think she had dressed for innocence. Behind her, voices softened as people noticed me. Ryan stood near the kitchen island with his parents. My mother sat on the sofa, clutching a tissue she had probably prepared before I arrived. My father looked relieved, as if my presence meant obedience. Brooke smiled with wet eyes and reached for my hand. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. I looked past her into the room full of people waiting to watch me shrink. Then I looked back at my sister, who had mistaken my quiet for surrender one time too many. "Don't thank me yet," I said. The room did not look like a brunch. It looked like a hearing with fruit salad. Brooke had arranged pastries on white plates, poured orange juice into glass pitchers, and placed fresh flowers on the table like beauty could soften an ambush. Everyone sat too straight. Everyone looked at me too quickly. Then away. My mother dabbed her eyes before I said a word. Performing injury for an audience that had already been told I was the weapon. Ryan's mother, Patterpace, spoke first. She had always treated me politely, in the distant way people treat furniture in someone else's house. "Lena, we all want peace," she said. "But peace requires honesty." I nodded once and set my folder on the coffee table. "I agree." That seemed to comfort them. My father leaned back slightly. Brooke let out a small breath. They thought I had come to confess. They had mistaken calm for defeat. My mother lifted the printed statement from beside her purse. "We don't need a scene," she said. "Just read this aloud. Sign it, and we can start healing." I looked at the paper in her hand, then at every face in that apartment. Cousins, in-laws, the pastor, Ryan pretending to be wounded, Brooke pretending to be fragile, my father pretending he had not slid those same words through my chained door like a bill for my own humiliation. "No," I said. One syllable. No explanation attached. My mother blinked. "Lena." "No," I repeated. "I'm not reading a lie so Brooke can keep wearing my wedding deposit like a clean dress." The apartment went quiet. Brooke's face tightened, then folded into hurt. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Because you keep asking the wrong question," I said. "The question is why all of you thought I should keep paying for what you did to me." Ryan stepped forward, palms open, wearing the same reasonable mask he had worn at the restaurant. "This is exactly what I mean. You're twisting everything. Nobody made you pay for anything." I opened the folder and handed the first page to Patricia. The original venue contract was in my name. $6,000 came from my savings account. After Ryan and Brooke's relationship became public, my mother asked me to transfer the reservation credit to them because it would help everyone move forward. That email is dated March 18. Patricia read the page, and the color in her face changed slowly. Ryan's father leaned over her shoulder. My mother stood. "Private family financial matters have no place here." I looked at her. "You invited 23 people to watch me apologize. You don't get privacy only when the truth arrives." My father said my name sharply, but it did not enter me the way it used to. His anger had always been a leash. That morning, I finally saw it was not locked. Brooke reached for Ryan's arm. "She's making it sound like we planned this." I turned the second page around. A printed screenshot from the restaurant lobby footage. "This is you speaking to the man who photographed me leaving with Dominic." I did not call him Daniel anymore. I did not need the lie. His company sells reputation management services. He posted the first anonymous thread about me, 23 minutes after we left the restaurant. Brooke stared at the image. Her mouth opened. But nothing useful came out. Ryan took the paper from her and scanned it too quickly. That doesn't prove anything. It proves she knew the picture was coming. I said. It proves the dinner wasn't ruined by my reaction. It was being managed before I walked in. I looked at Brooke. You didn't just take a photo when you felt hurt. You prepared a story, because you were afraid I might finally tell mine. My mother's tissue had stopped moving. The pastor shifted uncomfortably near the window. Patricia looked at Brooke, as if seeing a different woman underneath the white sweater. Brooke's eyes filled. But this time I watched carefully. No tears fell. I was scared. She said. After the way he looked at us. After the things he said, Dominic said, you stole what wasn't yours. I interrupted. That scared you because it was true. Ryan snapped then. You're obsessed with being a victim. The sentence came out loud and ugly. And for a second the room saw him before he could hide. I took out my phone. My hand did not shake. That surprised me most. I want everyone to hear something. I said. Not gossip. Not my interpretation. Ryan's own words. 2 days after I found him with Brooke. His face changed before I pressed play. The voicemail filled the room in his voice. Thinner and younger than he sounded now. Lena. Please don't tell everyone yet. Brooke is scared. I know what we did was wrong. But if this gets out before we explain it, your parents will hate her. No one moved while it played. No one breathed loudly. When it ended, the silence had weight. Not the soft silence of shock. The hard silence of a door closing where a lie had been standing. Patricia looked at her son. Ryan. He rubbed both hands over his face. It was a bad moment. It was the truth. I said. Brooke turned on me then. All softness, gone. You saved that, yes. For 6 months, yes. Her voice sharpened. So you were waiting to destroy us? I looked at my sister. The girl I had once covered for when she crashed my father's car. The girl whose prom makeup I fixed in a bathroom stall while she cried. No. Brooke. I was waiting for you to stop. That landed harder than anger would have. Her face twitched. My father stood and pointed toward the door. Enough. This family will not be torn apart over a wedding mistake. I looked at him for a long second. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. A mistake is sending a text to the wrong person. Sleeping with my fiancé, and then asking me to fund the celebration, is not a mistake. It is a choice. And defending it for 6 months is another one. My mother began crying for real then. Or close enough. What do you want from us? She asked. It was the question people ask when they realize an apology might cost them something. I had thought about that question all night. I could have asked for repayment. I could have asked for a public correction. I could have demanded that Brooke remove the post. That Ryan retract his comment. That everyone in that room admit what they had done. But wanting from them had exhausted me for years. I want 3 things. I said. Brooke deletes every post and comment implying I'm unstable or dangerous. Ryan posts a correction saying our relationship ended because of his affair with Brooke. And that he lied when he suggested I might hurt anyone. My parents repay the $6,000 by Friday. My mother looked offended by the money. Ryan looked terrified by the correction. Brooke looked like I had slapped her with air. And if we don't, Brooke asked. There it was. The real person again. Not wounded. Calculating. I placed one final page on the table. Then the folder goes to every person who was invited here. Every vendor connected to your wedding. And every relative who commented on your post. The voicemail goes with it. So does the lobby footage. I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you the cost of continuing to lie about me. Ryan's father stood slowly. Patricia. We're leaving. Ryan turned toward him. Dad. Come on. His father did not look at him like a proud parent. He looked at him like a man reviewing a bad investment. Your mother and I will discuss whether we are comfortable contributing anything further to this wedding. Brooke made a broken little sound. Ryan reached for her, but she pulled away. Not out of shame. Out of panic. The money had moved. So her love shifted with it. My father stared at me as if he could not understand the woman I had become. That used to be my fear. That morning. It felt like evidence of growth. My mother whispered. You would embarrass your own family over money. I picked up my folder. No. You embarrassed your daughter over reputation. I'm protecting myself with facts. I turned toward the door. And for the first time in my life, nobody in my family knew what command to give me. Brooke followed me into the hallway before I reached the elevator. Her bare feet made no sound on the carpet. Lena, she said. I stopped, but did not turn right away. When I did, she looked smaller than she had in the apartment. But not sorry. Just cornered. You already ruined everything, she said. Isn't that enough? I looked at my little sister and felt the grief come. Old and tired. But no longer obedient. I didn't ruin what was honest, I said. Only what needed me silent to survive. The elevator opened behind me. Brooke's eyes flicked past my shoulder, and her face drained. Dominic stood near the lobby doors downstairs, visible through the glass wall, hands folded in front of him, not coming closer, not performing power, simply keeping the promise I had asked for. A normal witness. A ride. A door that would open when I chose to leave. By Friday, the money was in my account. Ryan posted a correction so stiff and legal-sounding that I knew someone's father had helped write it. Brooke deleted her posts without apology. My mother sent one message saying she hoped I was satisfied. I did not answer. Satisfaction was not the word for what I felt. Freedom rarely arrives like fireworks. Sometimes it arrives as a quiet bank notification and a phone that no longer rings with orders. I went back to the cafe the following Monday. Dana apologized with tears in her eyes and offered me extra shifts. The one-star reviews disappeared after Tessa and 3 regular customers told the truth in a way I never asked them to. People still whispered for a few days. They always do. But whispers lose interest when the person they are meant to punish keeps standing upright. I made coffee. I paid rent. I slept through the night for the first time in months. Dominic came in near closing 2 weeks later. No men in the window this time. Or none I could see. He ordered black coffee and sat in the same back booth like the story had folded back to its beginning. I brought the cup over and placed $300 beside it. He looked at the money. Then at me. What's that payment? I said. For one night of dignity. His eyes warmed slightly. I told you to keep it. And I told you I don't take charity. He considered that. Then picked up the bills and placed them in the tip jar by the counter on his way out. Tessa nearly dropped a tray when she saw it. At the door. Dominic paused and looked back. You never needed a husband. Lena, he said. You needed witnesses. Then he left before I could answer. And the bell above the cafe door rang softly behind him. People later asked whether I was afraid of him. The truth was complicated. Dominic Vale was a dangerous man. I was not foolish enough to romanticize shadows just because one of them stood between me and a cruel room. But fear taught me something that season. Danger is not always the person with the scar, the black car, and the name whispered through a city. Sometimes danger sits at your mother's table, smiles for photographs, and asks you to bless the person holding your stolen ring. I did not attend Brooke and Ryan's wedding because there wasn't one. I heard they postponed, then separated, then blamed stress, timing, and outside pressure. That was fine. People like them always search for a gentler word than consequence. My parents tried to invite me for Thanksgiving that year. The message said, it would mean a lot if we could move forward. I wrote back one sentence. Moving forward does not mean walking back into the same room. I still think about that restaurant sometimes. The candlelight. The ring. My mother's toast. The way a borrowed lie accidentally led me to the truth. I had wanted a man beside me so I would not look abandoned. But abandonment was not arriving alone. Abandonment was sitting with people who knew your pain and still asked you to make it smaller for their comfort. Healing did not make me soft in the way people like to imagine. It made me precise. I learned to save voicemails. I learned to read contracts. I learned that boundaries sound cold only to people who benefited from your warmth having no limits. I learned that forgiveness is not a family discount code. It cannot be demanded at brunch, printed in a statement, or traded for a place at a table that was never truly yours. The cafe became my symbol after that. Not the restaurant. Not Brooks' ring. Not the black card with no name. The cafe. With its burned espresso, sticky counters, and ordinary mornings, reminded me that I had rebuilt myself in public without applause. I had stood there wounded, tired, underpaid, and still capable of choosing honesty when everyone else chose neatness. So when people ask what happened the night I hired the most feared man in Chicago to pretend he was my husband, I tell them the truth. He did not save me. He did not destroy my enemies. He did not turn my life into a fairy tale. He stood beside me long enough for me to remember I had legs, a voice, and the right to walk away. And once I remembered that, no one in my family ever got to call me abandoned again. For a long time, I thought being abandoned meant standing alone in a room full of people. But I was wrong. Abandonment was sitting beside people who knew exactly how much they hurt you and still expected you to protect their reputation. That night, I hired a stranger to pretend he was my husband. But he did not save me. He simply stood beside me long enough for me to remember I had a voice, a choice, and the right to walk away. And once I remembered that, no one in my family ever got to call me abandoned again.